Sometimes when I'm standing and looking at a group, I think about all the different body parts that are in the room. And no, really, it's kind of crazy. But I'm just thinking today, how many hands are in this room? Maybe 300? Well, no, not 300. Maybe 400? How many hearts beating? Some faster than others, like myself. And how many brains? Now, your brain actually has over 100 billion cells. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, so bear with me a little. I think it's about 100 billion. And each one of those cells have connections with 1,000 more cells. So that means you have 100,000 billion cells, which I think might be like 2 trillion, but I'm not sure. But the big thing is, Norman Cousin tells us that our human brain has more potential than most of the galaxies that we even know of. So, if we have that much brain power and that many hearts, we have potential for a lot of love, and that many hands, we have a potential for a whole lot of stuff to do. So, but just thinking about the brain, if you will do just a second, turn to the person next to you and look at them in the eye. Okay, let's do that. And think about that brain that's in their head. You might not have thought of that when you sat down, but just take 5 seconds and just think of the potential that's sitting next to you. 5 seconds. Okay. Were you as impressed when you first sat down than you are now? And now let's do something else. Let's think about your own brain. You might not have thought about that for a while, but I'm told that it's kind of amazing that we can even think about our brains. So I guess a dog doesn't do that. But just think for 5 seconds about your own brain and ask yourself this: all that potential, and am I tapping into my creativity? Okay, 5 seconds. Think about your own mind. Okay, so your brains are activated. So when we have all this potential, we have to ask ourselves the question, why are so many people working in jobs that they just live for the weekend? Why are so many students in majors that don't like their passion? And why are so many organizations limping along and not being creative? Why do we settle? That was the question I asked myself as Kurt walked out of my office for the last time. Kurt was a student from the West Coast. He was 6'2", and his dad was a road sign maker. I never really thought about road signs except following them, that someone actually makes them. But his father was a road sign maker, and I also didn't realize how lucrative making road signs were, because when his dad brought him to school, he paid cash for all 4 years, wrote a check. And Kurt wanted to be a businessman like his dad. So when his dad left, I happened to be there at registration, and he said, okay, actually, I think I'm going to enroll in nursing, pre-nursing. I said, oh, I thought you wanted to be a business person. Now that my dad's gone, I'm a little nervous. I'll never be as good a businessman as him, so I think I'll go into nursing. So he actually went into nursing until he realized that the sight of blood made him throw up. And then I saw him a little later, and he says, oh, no, I've decided to be an archaeologist. I said, okay. He said, I've dug a lot of ditches for my dad. I said, okay. But he said, now that I'm in it, I don't really dig it. He said that. He said, did you get my joke? I said, yes. He said, well, what do you think I should do now? And I actually said, it was kind of mean, I said, don't be a comedian. Don't go into the field of comedy. And then I didn't see him for a while, and then he was in my office that day. And he said, I became an education major, and then I thought, what am I doing? I spent my whole life trying to get out of the classroom, and I'm taking a profession that would put me in the classroom. I'm done. I'm leaving Miss Tilstra. I'm out. I said, Kurt, what happened to your dream about being a business person? No, I'm going back home, working for my dad. It'll be okay. It wasn't my dream, but I'm going to do it. And he left. And I sat there and said, how many times as an educational psychologist I'd sat there when other students, friends of students, teachers, staff, faculty, parents, friends of parents had said something to me like that. Yeah, it's not what I wanted. I thought of something else. I wish I could do this. I'm just doing this job so I can get... And I thought, there's something I need more of. The tools that we have are not adequate for the big issue that people face, that they don't align with their passion. So I said, there has to be something. But I didn't know what. But I said, I'm going to find out. And then one day, I was in Chicago, attending a lecture by the great DeWitt Jones, National Geographic author, or photographer and filmmaker. And he was telling us, it was in a huge auditorium. I was all the way up at the back. In fact, I was so far back, I was resting my head on the wall. And no, that's just a little side fact. He told us these fantastic stories of his life perched in a tree, waiting for a lion in the perfect photo, or crouching down in a canoe, waiting for a photo of a crocodile, or sitting in an island in Indonesia, waiting for the largest flower in the world to bloom, and it only bloomed for an hour, and they didn't know when it was going to bloom, so he sat there for days. And he said he loved it. The mosquito bites, the sunburns, the sand in his shoes. It was his passion. I wanted to take pictures for people to see the world in its beauty, he said. And he went on and told all kinds of stories. And he said, I lived a life that I identified and I connected to my own creative capacity. And every day was a joy for me. And then he asked the audience, thousands of people, if someone could show you how to connect to your creative capacity and teach you how to live your passion, would you do it? He said, if so, stand up. And remember, I'm in the back, all the way to the back, and thousands of people just jumped to their feet and just erupted in applause. And at that moment, I knew what I had to do. It was so powerful seeing all those people. I said, that's it. I have to figure out, learn, and understand the creative process so I can create a space or teach people, if they want to learn, how to connect with their creative capacity so they could also be on fire. So I rushed out of the auditorium, called my husband, said, Dan, I found what I think I found my answer. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And then I learned of a doctoral program I could get into, and it was a leadership program, but the whole program was understanding creative thinking, creative process, and how that affects change and ignites potential. So I enrolled in the program, and it was so amazing. Went just different places around the world, learned about creative spaces, different gurus who are in creativity. And then when I was working on my dissertation, I got a call from an executive at Florida Hospital, very large hospital system in the United States. Most of in Florida, there's 22 campuses. And he said, I heard, you're working on this dissertation and studying creativity, and healthcare is falling down around us. I've got to get a way to really activate the talent of the whole system, and people don't want to talk, and we're so stratified, and we have so much hierarchy. And he said, I've now been asked to be the chief innovation officer, and I don't even know what to do. And so as we talked, I said, well, I've been studying about innovation spaces and labs, and we could try something. And he said, I need it to activate everybody within the system, because if we don't do this, we are going to fail. And so as we talked, we said, well, let's create a space that actually creates better solutions for healthcare. That'd be a start. And then also I said, well, why don't we also create it so that people coming in would learn how to become design thinkers and learn how to foster a culture of innovation, so when they created new things, they actually learned how to be more creative, therefore connecting with their creative capacity. So he said, let's do it. I said, I have the theory, sort of, but I don't really know I don't come from healthcare, so I don't understand the culture of healthcare. He said, oh, I can solve that. So he sent out an email to hundreds of people within the system and asked if anybody wanted to help create an innovation space, email him, and he got hundreds of responses. And somehow he picked 12, I'm not sure how. But we got the 12 people. Then we decided to meet at this beautiful garden cafe, and we sat there, hadn't eaten the food yet, and he said, thank you so much for signing up for this, and what you're going to do is transform this institution, and you're going to ignite the creative talent within the organization. Now, I hadn't quite explained it that way to the people, and they were sitting in tables, and I saw their faces going a little white and their mouths dropping open. And he said, I brought Karen here, and we're going to make this organization into a whole creative organization. Have a great meal. I'll be touching back with you as the months go by. Good luck. And so he left. And I didn't really know these people. And one lady said, I thought we were signing up to create a room with whiteboards and maybe some inspiring sayings, and maybe a bouncy ball. And another lady said, oh, yeah, did he just say we're going to get frontline workers connecting with executives and they're going to listen? And another person said, that means doctors and nurses, nurses telling doctors collaborating. And then what I loved is the lady over here said, what planet did you come from, Karen? I said, well, for a moment, I said, okay, this is where theory and reality meet and collide. I said, well, here's the thing. Do you realize how almost every institution is failing in the United States? That disruption's happening everywhere, and this is an opportunity. If we don't create a space that activates the collective intelligence and creative capacity and leadership potential of everybody within the system, this isn't going to work. And then I told him about Kurt. I said, this is important to me because I've seen people fail. I've seen people, as a psychologist, settle. It's good enough. I said, we have an opportunity to create something that doesn't exist. There's no hospital right now that has a design thinking lab. We could light the way for people. And I said, but I don't understand the culture, so I have some theory, and you understand culture, and maybe together we can create it. And I don't have all the answers. We'll do it together. And so we started working, and the weeks went by, and they said, one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get past the badge. If you've been in a hospital and you see they always have badges, the badges say a lot, which I've learned. I didn't know that when I went into this little adventure. But the badge says MD or executive or X-ray tech, or it classifies them. Even if they don't want to admit it, it does. And this group said, we're going to have to do something to get the badges off if we want to create a culture where everyone is there, that it's inclusive for everybody, from the janitor to the executive. And the executive wanted to have everyone within the system come into this space and create. And so one person said, well, then let's take the badges off. And one lady said, maybe we can hang them on the wall. And then one of the people said, let's create a badge tree. Okay, that sounds like a good thing. And so we hired a local artist to create a badge tree. And we told her what we were doing, and she said, okay, I'm going to create something really inspiring for you guys. So week passed, she brought in this tree that we attached to the wall, but she said it's a bamboo tree. Bamboo is all about creation and renewal. But as I looked at it, I said, not that I knew from experience, that looks like a marijuana plant. And then one of the guys said, oh, that's a good omen, let's leave it. So we said, so we started our badge tree, and then we said, okay, the badge tree. We needed to create bridges in for people, and so they'd come in and put their badges on the badge tree. And then we said, okay, we haven't changed any behavior. They hang their badge on the badge tree. But what? Well, one of the ladies had been studying, had a good friend who was a pilot and learned all about the pilot's checklist manifesto. And she said, well, they go through quite a checklist, and they check into things. And they said, hey, maybe we could create a space where they check into things. Check into the space. And so we were studying a little more, and we said, okay, let's have a check-in. They hang their badge up, and they check in. And what about if they check into their own creativity? They believe in their own creativity. And what if they checked into a yes-and attitude? And practicing precise observation and become empathetic to the people they were trying to create solutions for. And what if they checked in then to asking burning questions, because we know we don't really ask questions in hierarchy, not freely anyway. And so they said, okay, that's what we'll have them check into. So that's really the tenets of creativity. Believe in your own creative self, suspend negative judgment, say yes and, observe and ask questions. So we created this check-in process, and then we did a few other things and got the room ready, and then we launched the projects. So we had 12. Actually, we only had 11 now, because the executive said, Karen, I gave you 12 because I thought this would be like a spiritual journey. Jesus had 12 and lost one, so I thought we probably would lose one. I said, okay, well, that one kind of betrayed as I recall. Said, well, okay, she was gone. And so we started the projects. We divided the group into 3 groups of 4, 4, and 3, and they started running different projects. The design thinking process that I taught them, and we were learning. Actually, we were learning as we go. And so the executive said, I think we're going to have to really advertise when they're done, because people won't know about the projects, or they won't know about the lab. But surprisingly to us, the word got out as we had different people involved in these projects. And when the projects ended, we had a list of people, I want to come in, or we had people, I want to bring a project in. I can't believe I have worked here for 20 years and I'm able to do something like this. And so as we launched projects, we had a mandate from the executive that we would align all projects with the hospital priorities and get an executive that would sponsor it, and then let any project go. And if they failed, it was okay, and if it was successful, it was okay. The idea was everything was grist for the mill. We were going to experiment. Did people tap into their creative capacity and help the organization? Well, projects started running, and the excitement was running high. And we didn't say no to any projects except one. There was a department that came in, and they were all excited, and they said, we want to redesign our work experience in our department. I said, okay, and we're kind of trying to figure out what they're doing. But as we dug a little deeper, what they really were doing was how they might create a very innovative way to get their boss fired. And so we said, okay, well, maybe you better go to HR, not here. And then we had doctors started coming in, and nurses, and we were learning more. We were started to teach more aggressively design thinking. And one day, we had a group of neurosurgeons, brain surgeons in the room. Have you ever been in a room with brain surgeons? Really, you never even see them. But we had 4 of them in there. And so I got to wondering, I said, when things are not hard and we think they're hard, we say, this isn't brain surgery. And so I said, do they know we say that? And so I said, this saying goes around. And then I started thinking, they probably don't say that when something's easy for them. And I said, okay, they say something. So I said, what do you guys say? And they said, well, we say it's not like talking to women. And I thought, so then my heart went out to the brain. I thought, these guys are good. These are true blue guys. And so then we started hearing reports. We started getting outcomes. Employee engagement started to raise. Now, I don't think the Florida Hospital Innovation Lab, what we call FHIL, can take all the credit for raised employment. But the executive said, no, this has something to do with it. The metrics started to improve. If you know anything about healthcare, there's the target, and you go from, if you're in the black, that's not good. If you're in the green, that is good. They went from black areas to green areas. And people started sharing what they were learning. We ran a survey, and we found out that 87% of the people that came into FHIL were applying what they learned, both professionally and personally. That was very thrilling to me. People started calling us from the community. 2 large university and a college institutions started calling, companies started calling, and we won a few awards too. But that wasn't as important to me as when people would see me in the hallway, or people would see me somewhere, or some of our team members, and they'd say, thank you. We really learned something. It really made a difference. I've become a little more popular in my department since I've learned how to say yes and. And he said, I've learned more about empathy, and to actually go and experience what the end user is experiencing, and go and actually, it's not my idea, it's their idea, or what needs to happen, not what I think needs to happen. We're learning a lot. Things are getting better for us. And one day I was at a restaurant, and a lady came up, and she said, I don't think you know me, but I was in a project, and I had always wanted for years to start a home health business. And after running that project, she said, I actually realized I could do it. And I said, that's fantastic. So what I've learned after 4 years having FHIL open, 4 years, more than 400 innovation projects involving more than 4,000 people, that everybody is creative. And when we're acting on our creative capacity, we become leaders. And I have seen it over and over again. So what I want to leave with you today is every one of you here has creative potential and leadership ability. And when you tap into your passion and your talent, you change the world. And here's the most powerful thing about that. If you don't do it, nobody can do it for you. And the world will be lost to your talent forever. So remember, embrace your creativity, suspend judgment, be observant, and ask questions. And when you do that, you get into an open space. And that open space goes something like this. Remember the hands, heart, and head? An open mind, brain, rejects the voice of judgment. An open heart rejects the voice of cynicism. An open will, which is hands and actions, rejects the voice of fear. So, today I want to challenge you to tap into your creative capacity because the world is waiting.